Hey guys, another weekend of NFL football is upon us, and it starts bright and early on Sunday morning in Frankfurt, Germany, with a huge game between the Dolphins and the Chiefs. So let's not waste any time here, and let's jump right in to the two parlays that I've created for NFL Week 9 this weekend. And it's starting with that exact game we just talked about on Sunday morning, the Dolphins and the Chiefs. The NFL goes to Germany for this one, and it sees two of the top MVP contenders squaring off with Tua Tagovailoa and Patrick Mahomes. The total for this game is at 50 points. Now, some totals trends would point to the under here. If you were an under total, a total's better. In the three previous times an international game was lined at 50 or more points, the game went under by at least 11 points. KC is also 6-0 to the under when they played in games lined at 50 or more points for a total. Now, luckily, we're looking to cash something much easier here while still hoping for points from both teams, and that's a bet on both teams scoring over 1.5, so 2 or more touchdowns in this game. Miami is far and away the best offense. Their points per game average is 33.9. The Cowboys come in second in that category, and they're only at 28.1. Now, the Dolphins' passing game is first in yards per game, 301.5. They're also first in rushing yards per game, 151.8. They could find success versus a Chiefs defense that is just 19th versus the run. That could be an area for Miami to attack. Ex-Chief Tyreek Hill leads all wide receivers this year as a Dolphin now in both yards and touchdowns, so he will also want to be involved. And while Kansas City hasn't been as explosive this year offensively, they're still 12th in points per game allowed themselves, scoring 23.4. They could certainly exploit a weak Miami defense that is giving up the 8th most points per game, that being 25.5. The Finns also allow the 2nd most catches and the 5th most yards to tight ends. That could be a big day for Travis Kelce, big day for Kelce prop bettors. Surely he'll be getting a lot of catches from Mahomes. Now, there's a red flag for Miami here, and it's that they can't beat good teams. Their 6 wins are all versus losing teams, and those teams have a combined record of 11-27. They've lost, and they've lost big versus Buffalo and Philly, and versus good QBs this year like Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Justin Herbert, they've given up an average of 38.33 points per game. In fact, Miami hasn't been a winning team since Buffalo in Week 3 of last year. Not this year, last year. It's a long time. So there's no reason not to think Mahomes can't do something similar, especially since he is 8-0 straight up following a loss. But we did just see Denver score 24 against KC. Don't think there's any reason to think Miami couldn't do something similar. But win, lose, over, or under, I don't really care here. All I want is at least both teams to get 2 touchdowns, which I think looks very doable. Next up, second leg of this 3-leg parlay, I'm going Bears and Saints. Now, Tyson Bagent got a win in his first start over another backup quarterback when he played the Raiders, but he couldn't follow that up last week on Sunday Night Football in Los Angeles, losing to the Chargers 30-13. Bagent did throw for over 200 yards, he had 232, but he had 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Now, many of those 25 completions that he had, they were short. Tight end Cole Kmet had 10 catches, but only for 79 yards. Neither team ran the ball, with the Bears only totaling 79 rushing yards and the Chargers 54. But LA didn't really need to run the ball when they were throwing all over Chicago. Herbert had 298 yards and 3 passing touchdowns. The Saints have been a dead nuts under team and had only allowed one opponent to score over 20 points in their past 14 games. Their offense with Derek Carr was also sputtering, averaging just 18.2 points per game through the first 6 games. But Saints games have seen all kinds of scoring recently in the last few weeks. They lost 31-24 at home to Jacksonville, and they won 38-27 in Indianapolis last week. Now, if their offense keeps rolling like that against the Bears defense that ranks 23rd in yards per game allowed and 28th in points per game allowed, they should have too much for this Bears team on Sunday. The Saints defense has 9 interceptions. That's 4th overall on the year, and they could cause rookie Bagent problems all day long. Considering the Bears couldn't take advantage of a Chargers defense that ranks last in pass defense, I don't see them faring any better here against the Saints, who are 7th. This should be an easy Saints win. The last leg, we'll go to Seattle and Baltimore. This Seattle defense has been pretty solid. They're actually 11th in points per game allowed, giving up just 19.7 points. They're also strong versus the run, ranking 8th, and they just added Pro Bowl defensive end Leonard Williams at the trade deadline. Considering the Ravens like to run the ball a lot, this is a strength against strength, so they could keep this game close. In recent weeks, they kept the Cards and the Giants 10 and 3 points, but otherwise, teams like Cleveland scored 20, Cincinnati 17, Carolina 27, and Detroit 31, and the Rams 30 have all scored 2 or more touchdowns. That's something the Ravens, who are 7th in points per game, 25.3, have done in 7 of 8 games this season. They only failed to do so once, and that was in Pittsburgh their division rival, where they lost 17-10. I think we should at least see 2 touchdowns just from the Ravens alone. We'll go Baltimore over 1.5 touchdowns to round out the parlay with the Saints win, and over 1.5 touchdowns for both KC and Miami, coming in at minus 124 odds there. The next parlay is a 4-gamer. We're going to the Cardinals and the Browns. The Cardinals have been feisty and PJ Walker has not looked great, but now we get Clayton Tune for the Cardinals, a 2023 5th-round pick going into Cleveland to face the league's top defense. Tune's only NFL action thus far was throwing 1 pass for 4 yards against the Seahawks. Tune will have limited offensive weapons to work with here, as both starting running back James Conner and tight end Zach Ertz are both on the IR. So even though opponents have been able to run against the Browns a little bit in the last few weeks, the Cards don't have their top rushing threat to take advantage of that. PJ Walker may be 2-1 as a starter with the Browns this year, but he's only thrown 1 touchdown compared to 5 interceptions, so he certainly could mess up this parlay for me. However, as I was writing this up, it turns out we don't get PJ Walker. We're getting Deshaun Watson, who has decided that he wants to return to football yet again, and looks like he will be starting this game. He's not been great this season, but he is sure as hell a step up from PJ Walker. I'm counting on the Browns, though, defense regardless, that ranks 12th in points per game allowed, 1st in yards per game allowed, 1st in passing defense, and 7th in rushing defense, shutting down this rookie Clayton Tune and the Cardinals, who are 1-7 and riding a 5-game losing streak. Let's go. Browns win here. Next up is the Bucs and the Texans. The Bucs have the extra rest, having not played since Thursday Night Football when they played in Buffalo. They kept that game close, losing 24-18. Now that's a 6-point loss to one of the league's best teams and on the road, a place where actually 2 of the Bucs' 3 wins have come this season, so they're not playing that badly on the road this year. When the Bucs have scored 20 or more points, they're actually 3-0. When the Texans have allowed 3 or more points, when the Bucs have scored 20 or more points, they are 3-0. When the Texans have allowed 20 or more points, they are 0-3. So there seems to be a clear number that Tampa Bay will try to get to here. Both teams play to the under, with Tampa being 1-6 and Houston being 2-5. This also looks like a game that could have limited scoring. Tampa Bay actually may pull off the outright upset here as a short underdogs, but if they don't, and we add some points or lots of points to this Bucs spread, it's currently around +3, +2.5, somewhere in there. We're going to make them all the way up to plus of 14.5. I think we're looking golden in a game that might not have a lot of points. I don't see the Texans smashing anybody. I don't trust really either team to pull away. In fact, and when you consider Houston just lost 15-13 to the previously winless Panthers last week, I think plus 14.5 with Tampa Bay looks good. Next up, it's Colts and Panthers. That Panthers team, they just got their first win last week. Now, this bet's has everything to do with the Colts, both their offense and their defense. Indy is the only team to score 20 or more points in every game this season. They've also allowed 16 or more points in every game and 20 or more points in 6 of 8. The last 3 weeks, they've allowed 38, 39, and 37 points. That's so bad, even the Panthers offense that averages only 18.1 points per game, which is 25th, can surely score a couple of touchdowns or at least 10 points. They got their first win last week, like I said, beating Houston 15-13, and they have at least scored 10 or more points in all 7 of their games. Let's go both teams to score 10 or more points in this game. And we'll round it out with the Cowboys and the Eagles, an NFC East rivalry. This sees Dallas being 5-2 and Philly being 7-1 coming into this game, both at the top of that division. Both QBs have found success in this matchup, with Prescott being 8-3 straight up versus Philly and Hurts being 4-2 versus Dallas. Now they're side by side in points per game, with Dallas second, 28.1 points per game, Philly third, 28 points per game. Dallas comes in 4th in points per game allowed, but that still sees them giving up 17.1 points per game, while Philly's defense is just 19th. They've allowed 21.5 points per game. Dallas has spanked a few bad teams this year, like the Jets, the Giants, and the Pats, but they've given up 20, 17, and 42 points in the past 3 weeks. Still, last week they looked great. They thumped the Rams 43-20. That game was over long before it actually finished. Philly hasn't looked as good this season as they did last year, but still they're finding ways to win, and they are 7-1, so clearly one of the top teams in the league. Prop players, you'll surely want to target A.J. Brown this week, as he's now finished with an incredible 127 or more yards in each of his last 6 games, and he has 3 touchdowns in the last 2. The Eagles' offense has given up, though, 31, 17, 20, 14, and 31 points in the past 5 games. That's plenty of data for me to like backing both teams scoring 10 or more points here. maybe even both teams scoring at least 2 touchdowns. It's something, the 10 points or more, that's happened in each of the past 5 meetings between these teams. In fact, the lowest points that both teams have scored when these teams have played in the last 5 is at least 17 each, as the scores have been 40-34, 26-17, 51-26, 41-21, and 37-17. So in fact, both teams have scored at least 2 touchdowns in all those games as well. I'm just going very safe here and going both teams to score 10 or more points. To round out the parlay, that's Dallas and Philly, 10 or more, Indy and Carolina, 10 or more, Tampa Bay plus 14.5, and a Browns win. Not going to pay you a ton of money, but it does look pretty safe. It's minus 143 odds is what I've gotten with that one. So there you go, 7 games, 2 parlays, hopefully plenty of info for you to either follow these picks or make some of your own, or tweak some of these picks that I've made to maybe get some better odds with slightly different props. Now, if you like other games or other picks, please drop them in the comments. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out. Best of luck with all of your NFL Week 9 picks this weekend.